For those 10 months, as her abusers got her to provide ever more extreme content.
Who thrived online in an international network promoting extremism and violence.
Believed he'd entered a demonic pact in which he'd committed to killing women.
Detectives say they found more than 200 images on devices seized from the suspect's home.
Was lost, 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 lost.
I have met people who claimed to be Satanists, who claimed to be involved with black magic, who claimed that they not only knew a lot about it, but as I said, I've certainly haven't been involved, and I warn all of you, never, never, never. You will not only lose your mind, you lose your soul.
The FBI in St. Louis issues a warning everyone, especially parents, should hear.
Yeah, the special agent in charge of the division says a violent online network known as 764 is targeting minors using extortion as leverage.
I'm living this normal life here with my kid, and then at the same time I'm being threatened by satanic terrorists. And so I called and made a police report about it.
The most disturbing topic that we cover is child exploitation. And the reason we do this is to preserve the raw story, and to tell it unfiltered for the sake of the victim in order to raise awareness, and to not belittle their suffering for the comfort of the faint of heart. Often these stories are full of misinformation and bastardized in order to garner more views, or out of laziness, or perhaps fear of the subject matter itself. Here at No Happy Endings, we do not compromise for those with weak stomachs. Maybe we'll never give quarter to those who would harm children. This video dives into a very real network of child trafficking. In this video, we'll examine the alarming connections between terrorist groups, violent extremism, and child sexual abuse material as a whole. On September 12th of 2023, the FBI made a public service announcement about a violent extremist group called 764. The group's primary objectives were to use sextortion to obtain child sexual abuse material, or CSAM. Sextortion is extortion in which a perpetrator threatens to expose sexually compromising information, such as sexually explicit private images or videos of the victim, unless the victim meets certain demands. 764 is an offshoot of another terrorist group called the Order of Nine Angles. It is a secretive religious movement that combines elements of occultism, Satanism, and neo-Nazi ideology. Originating in the UK during the 1960s, it is known for promoting radicalization and has even been linked to violent extremism and criminal activities, the kind of crimes you'd find within a deep-fried YouTube conspiracy video about the Illuminati. However, these groups are very, very real. The internet and social media have been a breeding ground for terrorist groups and violent extremists in general. They use these platforms to disseminate their ideology, recruit new members, and even commit crimes. But technology also plays a crucial role in the dissemination of child sexual abuse material. Cryptocurrency, for example, has been used to facilitate the exchange of CSAM, despite most child exploitation material being traded freely. This is a market for the more extreme, and even custom material that the most depraved predators would seek out. According to a report from the Global Network on Extremism and Technology, analysis of the online activity of the O9A and those who adopt their visual aesthetics, such as 764, indicates that there is a significant threat nexus between terrorism and violent extremism content, i.e. gore material, and child sexual exploitation and sexual abuse material. The convergence of the TVEC and CSAM is mediated through digital platforms and ecosystems, particularly those linked into the gaming space. In other words, many of the same platforms and technologies used to disseminate terrorist ideology are also used to spread CSAM. And some of those platforms are far more simple and family-oriented than you'd think. Which, yes, this includes many spaces you'd consider internet safe spaces, like video game voice chat, which really, swear words and slurs aren't going to kill you. But these people just might. You'd be surprised at just how manipulative and how twisted and sadistic a predator can be, and just how easy it is to actually obtain private information from you without your knowledge via chat rooms, games like Roblox and apps like Discord as well. Research suggests that these groups often use child exploitation as a means to an end, whether it's simply to recruit new members, fund their operations, or simply satisfy their own twisted desires. Experts in the field have been warning about this intersection for years, but it's only recently that we've begun to understand the full extent of the problem. According to a report by the International Center for Counterterrorism, there is a growing body of evidence that suggests the link between terrorism and child exploitation material. This link is not only limited to exploitation of children, but also the use of child exploitation as a tool for recruitment and radicalization. The numbers are staggering. According to the National Center for Missing and Exploited Children, there were over 18 million reports of child sexual abuse material in 2020 alone. And it's not just the numbers that are alarming. It's the fact that these reports are often linked to terrorist groups and violent extremists. For example, a report by the Counter-Extremism Project found that the Islamic State, also known as ISIS, has been using child exploitation material and sextortion as a means to recruit members and fund their operations. But what drives this intersection? Research suggests that it's a combination of psychological, social, and economic factors. According to a report by the RAND Corporation, individuals who are drawn to terrorist groups and violent extremism often have a history of trauma, and these are the same factors that can contribute to the exploitation of children. Perpetrators often use manipulation, coercion, and violence to exploit their victims. And the internet and social media have made it so much easier for them to do so. There are many examples of this intersection. For example, the case of the Islamic State's use for child exploitation to recruit new members and fund their operations, or the case of the Order of 9 Angles, which has been linked to several cases of child exploitation and terrorism. These cases demonstrate the complexity and severity of the problem and a need for comprehensive and coordinated responses to address it. Order of 9 Angles teachings state that Judeo-Christian values, racial equality, human rights, democracy, communism, and capitalism are all intrusive forces opposed to the fulfillment of the, quote, imperium, and subsequent ascendancy of the Aryan race, and must therefore be destroyed from within, through esoteric rituals and direct action. The esoteric practices of the Order of 9 Angles often combine their near-comedic Hitler worship with occultist trappings, and encourage the recruits to commit sexual violence and create child sexual exploitation material. Their ideology openly promotes genocide to undermine society and other horrific acts. This is the only form of satanic practice that does this. This is not what Satanism is. This is the ugly reality of the darkness of humans.
In June 2020, sisters Bieber Henry and Nicole Smallman were brutally murdered in a knife attack by a stranger while celebrating Bieber's birthday in a London park. Their misogynistic killer, Daniel Hussein, now 19, believed he'd entered a demonic pact in which he'd committed to killing women. He was convicted in July 2021.
Face me, hands on your head, stay where you are. You're under arrest, all right?
Officers who arrested Hussein found a handwritten agreement in his bedroom in which he promised to sacrifice only women in return for money and power.
764 is an online child extortion group created by the Discord user named Bradley Cadenhead in 2021. According to statements by investigating officers who reviewed Cadenhead in the case, the investigating officer found that Cadenhead had been fascinated with online content depicting murder and torture from the age of 10. This demented behavior led Cadenhead to meeting a friend online via Minecraft, where the two would bond over their own twisted interests, edgy statements, and the game itself. They would discuss another notorious group called Cult, CVLT, a small sextortion group that targeted children online. This would initially give Cadenhead the idea to create something of his own. The name 764 derives from the partial zip code of Cadenhead's hometown of Stephenville, Texas. The idyllic image of Bradley Cadenhead's close-knit family began to unravel when he was just 10 years old. His mother began to distance herself from the family. She began to drink regularly and was always out partying. And by 2016, when he was in middle school, Cadenhead would become the target of bullying, as do many kids. His response, however, was to retreat to his room and then drop out of school. Suddenly, the picture-perfect home in Texas farmland was breaking. Cadenhead's family was known for never missing a Sunday service in church, but now the absence of the presence was noted. Cadenhead would regularly suffer mental breakdowns and dove into more and more depraved material. A passing interest in gore and edgy media turned into a fiendish desire to see the sadistic acts himself and the praise of mass shooters. Sitting at his computer, Cadenhead had created a persona in a Discord to cultivate a domineering online identity, one that soon built a global following among sadists who prey on vulnerable children. To understand how a bullied teen in a small town in Texas was able to commit abuse on such a large scale, and how the social media company failed to stop him, the Washington Post interviewed friends and family members and classmates, as well as school officials and congregants at his former church, and drew from hundreds of criminal and family court documents. There were also thousands of messages that were examined from his Discord between early 2021 until his arrest in August of that year. Cadenhead was banned multiple times from Discord, but would just create new accounts and new servers to repeatedly relaunch his twisted persona and predator friend group. And to make matters even worse, if possible, 764 does not only leverage the sextortion of minors, but also animal torture, incest, rape, and self-harm, as well as bestiality. 764 forced victims to carry out 4 key types of harm that are meant to be recorded and shared on social media platforms or disseminated internally. These include forced drug use and self-harm, such as non-suicidal self-injury with blades or needles, asphyxiation or burning. They also regularly encourage people suffering from mental health problems to kill themselves on camera or commit mass shootings. New recruits are also made to commit violent and often sexual crimes, lest they betray the group. They are also encouraged to engage in animal abuse, being forced to injure or kill personal pets or other animals is a common tactic. Sextortion and CSAM are also key dimensions of 764. Victims are groomed to share intimate images to subsequently be used to sextort and dox them, creating, quote, lore books filled with sexually explicit content and other compromising material are supposed to be shared with the victim's friends and family if they do not comply. In April of 2021, Cadenhead joined a chat room called No Feds Paradise, along with 2 other users posting thousands of images and another user described as Gore as CP. Ban him, another user exclaimed, urging the fellow user who served as a moderator of the chat room to kick Cadenhead out. The moderator ignored him. Cadenhead merely replied, "Try harder," writing under his pseudonym Felix while posting more images. Chat logs revealed that Cadenhead bragged that his extortions are wild, and further fueling his ego, another predator once referred to him as a god for creating a, quote, legendary group. Then he began to brag, to which his claims were true. At one point, Cadenhead pressured a 10-year-old girl to send nude pictures of herself. In another, he encouraged a user who had survived a suicide attempt to try again, even as a bystander warned of potential repercussions. However, this persona is something often predators craft to posture themselves. The same behavior can be seen within the Ripper Group copycats. The Ripper Group being a worldwide network of very real child traffickers and producers of CSAM. They have many copycats online. Cadenhead was fragile and suffering from severe mental health episodes and began to self-harm himself. In April of 2018, when Cadenhead was in 7th grade, his father found him on the floor of his room, curled up in the fetal position. He was crying and babbling and had shallow cuts on his arms. His father proceeded to call the mental health crisis hotline. They provided provided a referral 3 months out, but his father drove 100 miles to a facility instead right then to have him admitted, fearing the worst for his son, who merely just had medications adjusted and was subsequently released from care. This further isolated Cadenhead from his grip, and he began to spiral even further. At one point, it would seem in 2018, he would return to school, according to an article by the Washington Post, which claims that in September of 2018, students said they overheard Cadenhead saying that he wanted to bring guns to the middle school and kill children. Court records also show his teacher told police that she didn't feel safe with him in her class because she had overheard him talking about making bombs, making silencers for guns, and watching gore and extremist videos online. The school filed a police report which led to Cadenhead being charged with making terroristic threats, and a juvenile court judge placed him on probation for a year. A psychological evaluation determined he had disrupted mood dysregulation disorder, a condition in adolescence that involves regular verbal outbursts and chronic severe irritability, and that he was affected by parental relationship distress. According to a summary in court records, the summary also noted that there was suspected child neglect by his mother. However, to blame his twisted actions on mere mental health disorders and neglect would be to undermine everyone with mental health issues, as this is a different type of sickness, pedophilia, true sexual sadism in its worst forms. These are inexcusable and should never be defended, and his actions online spoke for themselves.
I can give you a guide on how to kill yourself 10 different ways that are very descriptive. Since you're too fucking stupid and can't kill yourself correctly, I want to watch somebody kill themselves in VC.
You know you're gonna go to jail, right? That's manslaughter by web. It's a crime.
Have you seen the shit I've been doing for almost a year now?
This was all the way back in 2021. The roots are embedded deep and oh so rotten. In February of 2021, a Texan named Caleb Christopher Merritt was arrested for sexually abusing and eventually abducting a 12-year-old girl from Henry County, Virginia. According to police, the two had met online and started a relationship sometime in the previous year. Henry County Sheriff's investigator P.C. Stone said that the Southwestern Virginia Internet Crimes Against Minors Task Force had received a complaint from the internet chat service Discord, warning that the girl had been making threats and statements of hurting herself. After the arrest, Stone said that Merritt is from a group of users that go by cult, who extort minor children, primarily girls, into committing self-harm and uploading their own child sexual exploitation material.
The Texas man accused of traveling to Henry County to abduct a 12-year-old girl still in jail tonight.
This after law enforcement worked for 36 hours to bring her home.
And as 10 News reporter Shane Dwyer has learned, police say she may not be the only child he's targeted.
After 36 hours on the run, it's in Henderson, North Carolina, an hour north of Raleigh, where police brought a national Amber Alert to an end.
Officers received that information, were in the area within 5 minutes, and was able to locate the vehicle in question.
Captain Chris Ball with the Henderson Police Department says they were called in to help when investigators tracked 21-year-old Caleb Merritt and the 12-year-old Henry County girl he abducted Friday to their area, thanks to electronic devices.
The street-level patrol officer was able to locate and apprehend this individual who appears to be perhaps a career individual related to these types of incidences based off of his criminal history or the knowledge based on that.
While we expect to learn more from search warrants and court hearings in the coming days, new details are coming out about the suspect. Investigators believe Merritt was talking with at least one other Henry County girl and are coordinating with other police departments to see if there are more. They describe him as a serial predator who traveled from Texas to Virginia and set up camp in the woods behind her home. Although they had multiple contacts via social media prior to the abduction, police say they lacked probable cause to arrest him. The young girl's family tells 10 News she continues to receive medical attention and is recovering. In Henry County, Shane Dwyer, 10 News, working for you.
Authorities also revealed that Merritt had taken explicit pictures and videos of the girl. Merritt was sentenced to 350 years in prison, eligible for release on parole after 33 years. Then, in 2022, on April 12th, A German teenager identified as Nino Luciano H. murdered a 74-year-old woman in Sibiu County, Romania. The murderer had been sent to live with a foster family in Romania as part of a German health protection program. Before the murder, in late March, he'd pushed an 82-year-old man down a flight of stairs and attacked him with a knife. The man survived after being treated at a hospital, but did not remember the incident well enough to identify his assailant. However, Luciano told his online friends that he killed the woman because he believed she was Jewish, and later, when he was caught, told that he killed her because he believed she was Roma, though the woman did not belong to either group. He recorded both incidents and shared them online. Then in March of 2023, the Romanian news outlet Libertatea reported that sometime before the murder, the teenager, identified in the article as Luca due to his age, had joined online communities described by the county prosecutor's office as racist, satanic, and full of Nazi ideology. According to the Libertatea, Luca had painted the walls of his room with satanic and Nazi images, as well as the number 764. He also had the terms like 764, 6996, and necro tattooed on his hands, and signs of self-harm on his body. Authorities also said that he had child exploitation material on his cell phone. The article described that repeated appearance of the number 764 as a reference to extremely violent online cult material that promotes child sexual abuse. Aside from these incidences, both Cult and 764 would stay out of news headlines until September 12th of 2023, when the FBI released a public service announcement warning of violent online groups deliberately targeting minor victims on publicly available messaging platforms to extort them into recording or live streaming acts of self-harm and producing child sexual abuse material. In addition to Cult and 764, the statement named 676, Court, Kaskar, Harm Nation, Leak Society, and Hell as similar groups that stated that these groups frequently evolve and form subgroups under different monikers. Many of these groups, including 764, are considered adjacent or associate groups of the Order of Nine Angles. Some familiarity with the group is necessary to fully understand its role and how it spawned 764. The Order of Nine Angles, or O9A, is a loosely organized satanic group, despite not actually following any real satanic practice commonly known, purely using imagery and bastardizing ritualistic ceremonies to add to their self-proclaimed evil. Originally based in the United Kingdom, the group openly condones violence and follows a Nazi-inspired ideology. The group's history and beliefs are complex, and a more in-depth breakdown of the group's history, philosophy, practices, and eternal reach and violent crimes can be found in the book Global Death Cult by William Ramsey. That book also covers related cases such as That book also covers other related cases such as the US-based Atomwaffen Division. There are also a few key points that are almost relevant to understanding the group's involvement with the extortion community. The Order of Nine Angles has no real structure or hierarchy. This means that an individual who becomes a follower of the O9A's philosophy and practices the Order's system of initiation is just as much a part of it as any other member of the organization. And for this reason, followers of the Order of Nine Angles can be more accurately considered associates rather than members. For example, an individual like Angel Almeida, who owned and presumably read O9A literature, would only need to carry out the O9A's personal practices, such as ritual magic and personal ritual initiations and crimes, to be considered an associate of the group. In theory, an individual who finds the Order's material online and actively tries to further its aim could easily consider just as much of an active associate as a member of an established Nexion. And thus 764 was born. In January of 2021, Caden had officially dropped out of school. His mother had received a call saying Caden had to enroll from school or she would face charges of truancy. The court records available do not identify the caller or say if the person was a school employee or not. However, it would seem she complied, as Texas law surrounding truancy is rather strict. In Texas, children are supposed to attend school until age 18. Texas law allows school districts to file a civil case against a student or parent after more than 10 absences in a 6-month period. Cadenhead was at 15 at the time, and that very same month, he would start his very first official 764 Discord server. In a familiar fashion as I've observed for myself, Cadenhead began to craft something unique for himself. Online, a persona that would curse the world with his presence, a persona that would allow Cadenhead to become the monster he truly was on the inside. Using variations of the screen name Felix, he regularly dropped into various Discord servers and posted gore, zoo sadism, and child exploitation material, urging other interested users to join him in other spaces on the platform, and bullying those who would react with disgust. The servers he frequented were largely unmoderated by Discord, which delegates most of that responsibility to the creators of the servers anyway. This is in part as to why Discord has implemented AI technology and had more intense security measures in the past 2 or so years. Cadenhead's activity promoting the 764 group quickly caught the attention of the feds and the National Center for Missing and Exploited Children, and a report was filed by Discord themselves in the very same month that he created the first server. However, as the investigation began, it could do nothing to stop Cadenhead from continuing to spread his disgusting habits and amass a number of victims in the time. He would live online at this point, and day and night work to recruit more like-minded predators, as well as collect victims. His group quickly gained notoriety for recruiting children to cut themselves or harm family pets and posting child exploitation and violent gore. According to Cadenhead, he had little interest in the child sexual exploitation, but he used it as a means to recruit predators to his group and to control and intimidate people. A 14-year-old girl in Oklahoma, for example, was persuaded to send Cadenhead, who was using the name Felix, or Brad, a nude photo, and then was blackmailed into cutting herself and mutilating her pet hamster on camera. The girl's mother previously told reporters that the girl, a fan of horror films, had been in a Discord server dedicated to gore and horror media when Cadenhead began to groom her and lured her into the 764 server. His account used a profile picture of Australian child predator Peter Scully, creator of Daisy's Destruction. The arrest of Peter Scully sent shockwaves in true crime communities as the horrific details of his crimes confirmed, and also created a few urban legends in itself. He is a disgusting patron saint to other pedophiles and predators who often bootlick the inflated myths of Daisy's Destruction selling for $10,000, which simply did not occur. However, this did not stop Cadenhead from making similar claims. Some of Cadenhead's comments appeared to be under the name Felix, claimed in the same chat that he had made $10,000 the previous day selling child exploitation, and in another, he claimed that he made as much as $25,000 in a day, which never occurred in any circumstance. Based on the description of some specific things he posted, it would seem Cadenhead enjoyed posting the entire Daisy's Destruction clip as well, quite randomly and quite often. A self-inflated ego is too common with child predators, but it does not mitigate any of the horrible crimes Cadenhead had incited as well as committed.
I make bitches eat their house pets and cut for hours straight. I got proof, too.
You're a freak of nature.
I'm the real deal.
Cadenhead's ignorance would quickly catch up to him, however. He frequently leveraged child exploitation and extreme gore in online arguments, threatening to send it to users who did not submit to his demands or lick his boots, more or less. In a true crime server, he was verbally warned about the possible legal repercussions to his actions online and subsequently reported. However, Cadenhead simply bragged that law enforcement could not and would not be able to stop him, even if they tried. An all too familiar statement. He flaunted his ability to evade bans on Discord and other platforms such as the gaming site Roblox by creating hundreds of new accounts, many using variations of the name Felix followed by a string of numbers. In one instance, he wrote that I'm device banned from almost all email services, and on July 10th of 2021 under the screen name Felix.0744 in a server called Feds. He said, I've been through about 400 Felix accounts and 100 fake accounts for Discord, banned on Roblox twice. I've already been reported to the FBI 15 times and they haven't done shit. This account, Felix6638, replied to another user who threatened to report him to police for posting child exploitation on June 17th of 2021. It took a total of 58 reports to the FBI about his accounts before he would be arrested. And much of his own ego is what was his undoing. 3 days after the user warned him about the potential risk of going to prison, Stephenville police received one of the 58 separate reports showing that a child exploitation incident had been uploaded by a Discord user accessing the internet somewhere in town. Court records show that reports were submitted through a national tip line that the public or social media companies can use to flag online child sexual exploitation material. Authors traced the images back to Cadenhead's mother's 2-bedroom apartment. When police showed up with a search warrant on the afternoon of August 25th of 2021, Cadenhead had emerged from the apartment, filthy and disheveled. Inside his room, which reeked of body odor and urine, they found a laptop that police later determined contained at least 20 images of prepubescent girls engaged in sex acts. They also found images of children who had carved "I Heart CP764" on them and "Brad is a pedo" onto their bodies. Multiple recorded videos of users being groomed, and a video of an adult male smoking heroin in honor of Brad 764. According to court records, in March of 2023, Cadenhead pleaded guilty to possessing child exploitation material without any agreement in place as to what his prison sentence might be. His attorney would argue that despite his crimes at his age, life in prison is simply cruel. However, the judge had other thoughts. Erath County District Judge Jason Cashin reviewed the disturbing images and videos from Cadenhead's computer privately in his chambers. When he returned to the bench, he listed each of the biblical 7 deadly sins by name, and said there was evidence of them in this case. Then, he said, "There is something horribly wrong with you. Horribly wrong." Bradley Cadenhead would be sentenced to 80 years in prison. As I will repeat, the FBI warned in the public service announcement in September of 2023 that these online groups were targeting vulnerable minors, including those who struggle with depression and suicidal thoughts, identifying 764 and other groups by name. The groups, some of which have thousands of members, evolve, splinter, and take on new names, posing a challenge for social media companies and law enforcement to take hold. And within those communities, despite his arrest, Cadenhead remains revered.
Cameron Finnegan was a social recluse who thrived online in an international network promoting extremism and violence. His bedroom in rural Sussex, draped in satanic imagery, was from where he encouraged a young woman to take her own life. Police currently don't know what happened to her. Police also found that Finnegan was in possession of an 11-page terrorism document detailing how to commit mass casualties, including vehicle and knife attacks. His search history was immense, but radicalisation began in late 2023. Evidence seen by Sky News shows Finnegan was a prominent member of the 764 group. Whilst much has been removed, sinister material continues to be shared, including pressuring others to self-harm and making light of child abuse. Some members have even called for his release.
The copycatting and splintering of these groups is so common that even copycats have copycats of these sorts of crimes and personas. Correlation between individuals and groups becomes very muddy the further we dive in. However, throughout the last 5 years or so, the onslaught of obscenely graphic and illegal material cycling online from these groups is becoming more and more clear, and it fearfully seems we are closing in on another era where urban legends become reality. The methods these groups use and the crimes they commit are beyond horrific, to say the least. But in its deepest origins, it would seem the interconnectivity is far from random. In September of 2023, a Russian ransomware group known as ALF-V, or Black Cat, claimed credit for an intrusion at the MGM Resorts hotel chain, which quickly brought MGM's casinos in Las Vegas to a standstill. And while MGM was still trying to evict the intruders from its systems, an individual who claimed to have first-hand knowledge of the hack contacted multiple media outlets to offer interviews about how it all went down. One account of the hack came from a 17-year-old in the United Kingdom who told reporters that the intrusion began when one of the English-speaking hackers phoned a tech support person at MGM and tricked them into resetting the password for an employee account. The security firm CrowdStrike dubbed the group Scattered Spider, a recognition that MGM hackers came from different cliques scattered across an ocean of Telegram and Discord servers dedicated to financially oriented cybercrime. Collectively, this is an archipelago of crime-focused chat communities and is known as the COM, and it functions as a kind of distributed cybercriminal social network that facilitates an instant collaboration. But mostly, the COM is a place where cybercriminals go to boast about their exploits standing within the community, or to knock others down a peg or two. Top COM members are constantly sniping over who pulled off the most impressive heist, or who has accumulated the biggest pile of stolen virtual currencies. And as often as they extort victim companies for financial gain, members of the COM are trying to wrest stolen money from their cybercriminal rivals, often in ways that spill over into physical violence in the real world. CrowdStrike would go on to produce and sell Scattered Spider action figures and feature a life-size Scattered Spider sculpture at this year's RSA Security Conference in San Francisco. But what does this have to do with 764, the Order of Nine Angles, or any of its associated groups? It is because those same groups are also active on the COM. They too get to brag and compete with one another, not just cybercriminals. This means that the sextortion of minors, zoo sadism, and even instances of murder can be used as bragging rights. Two of the most common forms of extortion perpetuated by the extortion community are fan signs or cut signs. Fan signs are a type of image depicting the name of a particular group or user written on a physical medium, or usually on the signer's body, but it is not uncommon for names to be written on paper, signs, or walls. Fan signs are typically written in marker, makeup, or blood. Cut signs are a subset of fan signs written by cutting names or phrases directly into flesh. The so-called dark web boogeyman, a Ripper copycat, also attempted to get victims to do this. In most cases, this is the easiest way to identify which individuals or groups are involved in that particular instance of exploitation, as the signs would typically be the name or an acronym of the perpetrator. The names Naro, Harm, Ella, Yuri, Ali, Sin, Flar, and Vor, all apparently associated with 764 and/or Harm Nation, appear in images of cut signs, or fan signs included in association with the user Harm, also include the term hate, or hashtag H8. At least one cut sign image features the name Wrath. Another cut sign image features the name that appears in screenshots of the now defunct Instagram account 09a.evil. That account, based on its other post, is believed to have belonged to Caleb Merritt. One post on the account featured a young girl in her underwear, with Caleb written on her body, apologizing for threatening to use witchcraft against Caleb, and begging for his forgiveness. The 09a.evil account also featured two cut signs with the name Caleb, and one of a pentagram. Caleb Merritt, was alleged by authorities to be involved with cult. This could imply that Wrath was also involved with the same group. A 764 and Harm Nation associate, also called Harm, appears to have received multiple fan signs and cut signs that imply a sexual relationship. One fan sign written in blood and photographed next to self-inflicted cuts appears to be an apology to Harm for an unspecified offense, followed by the assurance that, quote, "I will always be your little slut and slave," and a request to, quote, "please claim me back." Another sign written in blood says "slut for Harm," and another says "Harm runs me," with a heart. Other phrases that appear on bloody fan signs include "slave for Harm," "Harm's girl," and "daddy Harm." Additionally, there is some non-photographic evidence of COM members encouraging self-harm. A leaked screenshot from a user called Noro Hell, with some words scribbled out by whoever first shared the picture, reads, "I extorted this bitch. She was capable of everything. Fucked a dog, she was ready. Fucked herself, she was ready. She even was ready to kill herself. But when I told her to say, that's where she draws the line. A screenshot of a Snapchat conversation showed a user named Rabid expressing concern about being targeted by authorities, specifically saying they have the fan signs and cutting. A user called Rabid also appeared in screen recordings of calls in a 764 Discord server.
You ever just want to fuck a minor in front of people that hate you? I do. You ever just want to watch a minor fucking herself in front of a bunch of haters? Fucking minors. Minors.
And an Instagram account called Rabin7779 posted pictures relating to 764 as well. A photo of an anonymous person on a Discord call with a user called Knack showed the caller pressuring Knack into repeatedly taking unspecified pills, while he complained that he was in pain and feeling cold.
The pills or what?
I took another one.
Okay, how many do you have?
It hurts. I don't know. Number like 5.
Okay, take them.
It just hurts, bro. My stomach.
Okay, take them.
Knack is the name used by a 764 member who himself also participated in abuse. Rabid was recording describing child sexual abuse in multiple Discord calls. The profile picture of the user named Rabid would light up every time the person speaks in the Discord call, confirming this to authorities and other investigators. The same voice appears in even more disturbing recordings saying,
I have little children cut themselves for me and do weird shit. And, like, I might have people, like, strangle themselves with a fucking cable or, kill their pets or just do weird shit. And I record it. Or I have other people record it. And then, like, I'm part of a cult, like a really bad people cult. But I'm also part of some other shit, too, just like lame shit.
In the Snapchat screenshot where Rabid discussed having images of self-harm, he also claimed that he never grooms kids, and instead expressed interest in forming a, quote, satanic blood cult called Sewer. Rabid would eventually attract the attention of the FBI in a recorded Discord call. He describes a FBI raid on his home. And according to Rabid, the FBI did not find evidence of child abuse but did find illegal firearms. He also claims to be a veteran suffering from schizophrenia and living on veterans' benefits. In the recording, he expresses concern that he will face 10 years in prison for possessing the illegal weapons. A separate recording shows someone, allegedly Rabid, presenting a receipt for a property document from the FBI.
Hey, no, the people were telling them that I was going to shoot them when they showed up. They said I was going to shoot the police, that I have children full of basement. So they waited all fucking day long for me to leave the house, and when I finally left the house, they pulled me over. And then they had me in the snow on my knees and patted me down all this shit, put me in the back of a police SUV, drove me back to my house, and then I sat there while FBI and the whole road was filled with fire department, police, sheriff, everyone, every fucking police was here. The whole road was covered with fucking police, and that was so fucking embarrassing. And then they just ransacked my house. They just fucking went through every fucking thing for 5 hours. I was sitting there in that goddamn police SUV with those tight ass fucking double cuffs on.
Double cuffs.
And then at the end of it, the funny thing was, it's like they were there because the whole reason they were there is because people called up and said I had children in my basement, and they're looking for the basement, and it's like I don't have a basement. And it's like, oh, maybe this is fucking retarded. And then you know what?
The kids are fucking stupid.
That's why I'm not in jail right now, because all this shit was bullshit. They looked through my fucking phone, they looked through my fucking blogs on Snapchat, Telegram, everything. There was no CP mega file with child porn in it. There was no grooming DMs. There was nothing. But they did find loaded weapons because I did have those, and those are illegal. And that's a felony. It's a 10-year felony. I'm going to be going to prison for fucking that. Not for fucking any satanic cult, not for any Discord grooming, not for any of that shit. Just for the weapons. Because I'm paranoid schizophrenic and I fucking sleep with loaded weapons. Yeah, well, and that part is true. Yeah. And I can go to the VA, and like I was never in any trouble. Can you see it? Twerk. I'll just take a screenshot.
keeps shoving and disappearing. I don't know what it's doing.
Rabbit was active on a now defunct account called Rabbit7779 until November of 2023, and a new account, Rabbit the Sinister, became active in January of 2024. That account posted references to sewer and symbols related to Satanism and the Order of 9 Angles. However, Rabbit would soon be arrested. Rabbit would be identified as Richard Anthony Reyna Densmore of Caliva, Michigan.
Michigan man charged with manipulating children online was sentenced today in federal court. Investigators describe him as a once notorious figure in the darkest corners of the internet.
A warrant was obtained to search his home. Densmore was a member of 764 and known as Rabbit. He became notorious in the 764 network by creating servers titled Sewers on Discord, where members recruited children, including by infiltrating online gaming sites that children frequent. He would encourage them to cut themselves and engage in graphic sexual acts. Densmore boosted membership in the Sewers by advertising live streams of children engaging in self-mutilation or cut shows and other sexually explicit activity on cam. He threatened victims to cut themselves by telling them, "I have all your information. I own you. You do what I say now, kitten." Densmore kept child exploitation and bloody images of Rabbit and Sewer and 764 carved into victims' limbs, and in some cases with razor blades and box cutters nearby. Densmore also sexually exploited children directly. In October of 2022, Densmore unsuccessfully tried to persuade a minor girl to send him an explicit picture with Rabbit written on her bare chest. When she expressed discomfort with that request, Densmore contacted another Discord user and paid him Nitro, which is literally just Discord Premium, to help him secure a sexually explicit photo from this child. Densmore's efforts were successful, and at the request of the other Discord user, sent Densmore and the other user a nude video of herself with Rabbit written on her chest. Densmore was sentenced to 30 years in prison for sexually exploiting a child and pleaded guilty to sexual exploitation of a child, part of a broader indictment that charged him with other child exploitation offenses. The broader scale of depravity in these groups extends to, but is not limited to, animal abuse and zoo sadism. Coercion of victims into committing violent acts against animals is particularly prevalent in the 764/Harm Nation groups, but also appears to have occurred in Hell and 717, as well as others. This practice demonstrates the extreme degree of control the abusers have over their victims, and the amount of emotional distress they are willing to cause in order to exercise that control. One leaked image depicts a young girl holding a fan sign featuring the name Court 764 in one hand and a dead cat in the other. The name Court also has appeared in association with Hell in 717 and 101. A darkened and edited version of a second photo of the same incident was shared via an Instagram story by a now defunct account called Filk, or FYLQ. Captioned, "Free Court 764, he's coming home next year," referencing the belief that Court had been taken in by authorities. There are many such claims and rumors of arrests being made in cases like this, but it's almost always ego-inflating or speculation. Rumors just to boost ego with each other. Sources are hard to verify for most. Another image that is heavily circulated shows a dead cat dangling in front of a fan sign featuring the names Ronan, Knack, and Harm, as well as the number 764, and a pentagram. A video of a Discord call, though muted, ostensibly shows Harm forcing a person to kill a small pet on a live-streamed video. The muted video shows that a person named Harm is speaking throughout the whole thing, and 2 fan signs were made as part of the same incident, one featuring the name Harm and the other saying #H8, and both featuring the animal's decapitated head. An image of the person holding a cat down by its neck includes a sign reading Harm 764, maybe do this. There's also an Instagram story posted by the Filk account showing a short clip of a girl grabbing a cat by its neck with the caption, "Just made this girl kill her cat for me." The girl in the image has the Harm Nation logo and the term sin written across her chest in blood. Filk also claims associated with 764, Hell, and the O9A. The clip does not actually show the cat dying, but it appeared to be in heavy distress. And one other instance of animal cruelty and the attempt to coerce a child to murder was observed on the YouTube channel Trait764, who in March of 2022 would upload a video that featured screenshots of a Discord call between users named Trait and Wolfie Lullaby. In the discussion, Trait attempted to use the other user's address to pressure them into killing their own mother. They begged him to make them do anything else. The video ends with the image of the cat with a blade held against its throat, and it's unclear if the animal was killed or not. The most serious confirmed instance of a COM member directly hurting someone in person is the murder by a 764 member in Romania in 2022. The user Tob764, who also used the name Hurtcore on some platforms, HVRTCORE. This video was actually covered by many, including Disturbed Reality and almost by myself as well, with only the knowledge that it occurred seemingly at random during a Discord call. However, the reality was, it was a murder done in dedication to 764, or possibly another offshoot, by one of its members, Nino Luciano. On April 12th of 2022, Luciano killed a 74-year-old woman from Medias without reason. The woman had left her house to take out the trash and was returning home. Luciano then stopped her in her tracks in the area of the garage, beat her to the ground, then presumed to kick her, and then slashed her throat with a knife. All while the event was being recorded via a Discord video call in the background. In the background, a man's voice could be heard encouraging the murderer, shouting, "Show me."
Yeah, I'm gonna do it.
Show me, show me, show me.
Una.
After committing the crime, Luciano calmly left the scene as if nothing had happened at all. Later, he was arrested and admitted he intended to join an extremist organization with neo-Nazi ideology, and the crime, which was targeting a Roma woman, was supposed to represent a demonstration of courage necessary to be able to join the group. The group is believed to be 764. The perpetrator was only 17 years old, and when he was only 11, he was sent from Germany to Romania through an association for re-education in his native country. He allegedly had problems with the law and issues with mental illness. And in August of 2023, an article from the Romanian outlet Adevărul reported that Nino had been sentenced to 14 years in prison. The same article alleges that he used the names Tobbs and Hurtcore among others, and a now defunct Instagram called Hurtcore, which claimed to be an owner of 101 and a member of 764 and Harm Nation, became active early in November of 2023, further fueling the cycle of splinters and copycats to continue. In February of 2021, a Texan named Caleb Christopher Merritt was arrested for sexually abusing and eventually abducting a 12-year-old girl from Henry County, Virginia. According to police, the two had met online and started a relationship. This occurred sometime in the previous year. The Henry County Sheriff's investigator and Southwestern Virginia Internet Crimes Against Minors Task Force received a complaint from the internet chat service Discord. Remember this? Warning that the girl had been making threats and statements of hurting herself. Merritt was quickly arrested after it was confirmed that Merritt was a member of Cult, the group that also, like 764 and others, extorts minor children into committing self-harm and uploading their own child exploitation material. Authorities also revealed that Merritt had taken explicit pictures and videos of that same child he abducted. Merritt was sentenced to 350 years in prison, eligible for release, and 33 years on parole. The most terrifying part about this is that Merritt had literally set up camp in a wooded area just behind the girl's home and began this relationship with her online. He groomed her via online chats and games, presumably Roblox. The warrant explains that Merritt had no other reason to come to Virginia from Texas other than to victimize the child. Warrants also show that Merritt told the girl to hide her phone on February 11th of that year after authorities contacted him regarding his suspicious activity. Authorities say Merritt then coerced the girl to leave her home. She was then reported missing the next day by her family. Authorities found Merritt and the child on February 13th in North Carolina. In other instances, Reddit user Rector MMA claimed in a comment to be Rohan and the leader of cult. In a different comment, he posted a link to one of the knife play videos, which is a private video only available to those who have the link. Rector MMA said that cult was a dark and sadistic cult and that they didn't care about morality, but described the group's activities as a way of masochistic tendencies, calling the self-harm a consensual form of extreme BDSM. And they stressed that everything is legal. However, Caleb Merritt allegedly met this eventual abductee through cult, implying there was some degree of sexual/romantic contact between adult and minors in the chat. The claim that all the server's activities were consensual is undermined somewhat by Rohan's open discussion of extortion in a video. And in a different comment, user Rector MMA claims that a girl had been recorded committing suicide in the cult Discord. A comment from 2 years ago on another of Rohan's videos asks, "Rohan, where the fuck are you, man?" Rohan's response reads, "Well, I was in jail, came home a month ago. Hope you're doing good, man." The perpetual cycle of abuse in clandestine groupings is still continuing, despite many of the figureheads of these self-described cults being in custody, and with no official hierarchy and such a wide acceptance of splintering and copycatting, there seemingly is no end to the horrific cycle that these groups create.
Although they had multiple contacts via social media prior to the abduction, police say they lacked probable cause to arrest him.
Tracing the connections between different extortion groups is difficult because the member lists of Discord and Telegram communities are not visible to people on the outside, and because the groups themselves operate across multiple servers and channels in a rather unorganized fashion. Social media makes it easier to map out connections between members of various groups, although not all of the most noteworthy members of a given group have social media accounts under their recognizable names. Additionally, some individuals claim affiliation with multiple groups, muddying things even further. The extortion community appears to be far more prominent on Instagram. And Twitter rather than Facebook or TikTok, although it maintains some presence on all of the platforms. Accounts such as Filk, Human666 Grinder, Rabid7779, CVRRC, KeepyWeep, and Fedraids and Hurtcore were all on Instagram but have been deleted, suspended, or renamed during the past months, so it is difficult to catalog all of their follows and followers. Given the extortion community's significant overlap with the Order of Nine Angles, both in terms of individual members and a larger social media ecosystem, there is a possibility that some of the abuse had a, quote, magical motive. Leaked excerpts from conversations between group members generally do not mention ritual or occult motivations at all, with the exception of the user named Rabbit expressing interest in forming a satanic blood cult. Occult symbolism plays a role in some of the fan signs and cut signs produced for the group, however. Cut signs and fan signs attributed to Caleb and Yuri sometimes include pentagrams or pentacles as well. In one of the images depicting a dead cat, the sign attributed to Ronin, Knock, and Harm features an inverted pentagram at the center with 7, 6, and 4 written in the top 3 angles, one of 764's often used logos. As displayed in a video by Trait764 in the profile picture of Sinister 764, it includes an inverted pentagram with a goat's head and the alchemical symbol of brimstone, also known as the Leviathan Cross or Lucifer's Cross. However, any real Satanist, atheistic, or theist will deny the validity of these groups in every single level. This is performance Satanism, a bastardization of a belief, like it or not. It is entirely unrelated to any established satanic group outside of the roleplay and terror of the Order of Nine Angles. If anything, this is the one thing that would bring true Satanists and Christians together: a common enemy, a true evil using dark imagery and very real crimes to promote actual evil in our world. However, this does not mean the group isn't using very real sigils and esoteric rituals and imagery in a horrific and self-designed fashion Goetic symbols, including that of Astaroth, have appeared in cut signs from the 764 group, for example. Violent extremism, by any means, seems to be a common theme, but another that often fuels these groups and always fits into their fundamental core mission is the perpetuation of hate crimes and speech. I am not talking about mean comments online either. A grand jury in Brooklyn indicted a man named Mikhail Chehikvishvili, who was 20 years old in July of 2024, on 4 charges, including soliciting hate crimes and acts of mass violence in New York City. Mikhail, who goes by the name Michael and Commander Butcher, was described as a leader in the Maniac Murder Cult, an internationally, racially, or ethically motivated violent extremist group. The group goes by the acronym MKY and follows a strict neo-Nazi ideology that promotes violence against racial minorities and Jewish community, and whoever the group deems undesirables. With members in the US and abroad, in August of 2021, the Russia-based NGO Sova Center reported that it had received emails containing videos of assaults and possible murders against migrants and the homeless, as well as arson. The emails were reportedly signed by a group called Maniacs Murder Cult, or MKU. Sova Center also reported that a number of people had been detained in connection with the group between February and April of that year. The emails reportedly suggested a connection between MKU and a Russian neo-Nazi group called NS/WP. The Sova Center stated that the Russian Federal Security Service called MKU a Ukrainian group, but denied knowledge of evidence linking the group to Ukraine. Later in December of 2021, the FSB claimed to have arrested 106 members of MKU and accused Ukrainian intelligence of directing the group. The Security Service of Ukraine denied all allegations, and it is unclear what evidence, if any, led the FSB to connect the group to the SBU. Chehikvishvili himself was arrested for a terrorist plot in New York. He solicited the help of a prospective MKY member who was actually an undercover FBI agent to commit a horrific act of violence. He planned to have a mass casualty attack in New York City occur. He wanted to have the undercover agent dress up as Santa Claus and hand out candy laced with poison to racial minorities and children at Jewish schools in Brooklyn, which led to his arrest and more eyes on yet another group tied to the 09A, and of course, 764. An edited version of the Luciano/Tobbs murder of the Romanian woman was posted on a popular Gore site. It opens with the Russian text attributing the video to MKU and referring to the murderer as, quote, a faithful son of the cult and a maniac. The phrases "open the Jewish woman's throat" and "murder is a holiday" appear later in the video. Another screenshot attributed to Luciano shows him pushing a man down a flight of steps, as we discussed earlier, and also shows an image sent by him of the letters MKY scratched into a wall, implying that he was personally interested in the group. The online news outlet called the Terrorism Research and Analysis Consortium, or TRAC, released a report in May of 2023 that included 2 images promoting a supposed alliance between 764 and MKU. One image included the text 764 MKU NLM. Another read 764 X MKY, Brothers in Blood. NLM refers to an online group called No Lives Matter. NLM's logo is described in the reports as a man's covered head. The image is actually a police sketch of serial killer Joseph James D'Angelo, and the term NLM also appears in a 764 recruitment post by Federal Raids. In the image, the 764 logo has been added to the forehead of the police sketch. Though these images point to a possible connection between 764 and MKU, they are not attributed to any particular user per se, and could have been made by anyone, regardless of how much actual influence they had on either group. The evidence of a connection between MKU, 764, and the Order of 9 Angles comes down to Luciano's self-proclaimed affiliation with all 3 groups, and a few anonymous social media posts. At the very least, however, members of all 3 groups seem to be aware of each other, and there's no discrimination so as long as the group acts in the common mission they share, with the exception of a few sly comments, competition, and shitposting. The 764 network is among the most populated of these communities, but there are plenty more. Some of the largest known groups include the former Cult, Court, Caste Madagascar, Leak Society, 7997-8884-2992-6996, Slittown, 555-404-545-303, Hell, and NMK. But much of the origins of these groups can almost always be traced as a splinter or tribute to the Order of Nine Angles, which is an entire complex and even more established group. However, they have suffered their losses as well. What actually cracked much of the case, so to speak, was an arrest of an alleged leader of the O9A in 2021 on an unrelated charge. Angel Almeida would be arrested in November of 2021 with charges of him being a convicted felon in possession of a firearm. He was indicted in December of 2021 and was detained pending trial, with a search warrant issued for his home. This is when authorities would begin to uncover the reality of one of the largest child exploitation rings in the world. In September of 21 and October of 2021, the FBI received tips regarding an individual named Angel Almeida possessing firearms and posting sexually explicit images of children online. The tip identified social media profiles used by Almeida, including a Facebook account with the profile name Sergeant Gray. FBI agents raided the home of Angel Almeida in Queens, New York in November of 2021 and seized a handgun, along with other paraphernalia including occult text and memorabilia that seemed to show his affiliation with the Order of Nine Angles. The media perpetuated it as it is, a quote satanic group that pushes its adherents to commit depraved acts, including sexually abusing minors. And on 2 separate occasions, Almeida spent months coercing 2 minors into partaking in sexual activities to create child exploitation material. His ignorance was also his undoing. On social media, Almeida posted images of himself bragging about his sexual crimes, as well as pictures of dead animals and guns with his face in it, despite being a convicted felon, which was quickly tipped off to authorities. The FBI initially was tipped off to Almeida's Sergeant Gray Facebook account first, which had images of Almeida wearing a skull mask in front of an O9A flag. This led authorities to a second account under the name Necropedocell, with images of a child bound and gagged, and a photo of a handgun with the caption, "For the 2K pedophile haters." As investigations continued, another account, this one on Instagram under the name Stainlord352, the FBI found a picture of Almeida wearing a t-shirt with the text across it saying "Kitty Fiddler." The image also included a sign that read that he is addicted to hardcore child porn. The account posted another photo with the caption, "No Limits Evil," a seemingly edgy tribute to the No Limits Fun moniker that Peter Scully created for his production of exploitation material, alongside of a photo of a mutilated cat that had been stabbed with a knife, presumably. This account also contains several references to the O9A. All of this quickly led to his arrest, and afterwards an additional indictment for his sexual crimes and other depraved acts online. Investigations found that between July of 2021 and December of 2021, Almeida enticed a minor whom he had groomed to engage in sexual acts for the purpose of producing videos between February of 2020 and November of 2021. Almeida also enticed yet another minor to engage in a sexual contact, a violation of the Mann Act. And this had me questioning that specific end of things. What is the Mann Act? A brief description reads, passed by Congress and signed into law by President William Howard Taft in 1910, that originally criminalized the transportation of women or girls in interstate or foreign commerce, i.e. between any two U.S. states or territories, or between a foreign country and the United States, for the purpose of prostitution or debauchery or any other immoral purpose. In other words, it's America's first direct law against human trafficking and forced prostitution, implying that Almeida was charged and may be found guilty of actually selling a child for sexual purposes, violating an act against human slavery. Now, as of January of 2025, the U.S. Attorney's Office announced charges against 4 men accused of participating in, quote, an international neo-Nazi child exploitation enterprise that had victimized more than a dozen minors directly. The charges issued by a federal grand jury on each man facing one count of engaging in a child exploitation enterprise, which, given who is issuing the indictment and charges, this means very big federal charges are coming. And the men being charged: Colin Thomas Walker, 23, of Bridgeton, New Jersey, a member of Cult who used handles including Colin, Goblins, and Wrath. Sound familiar? He coerced his victims into engaging increasingly demeaning acts online, including cutting, eating their own hair, drinking their own urine, punching themselves bloody, calling themselves and others racial slurs, and using razor blades to carve Cult members' names into their skin. According to court documents, he would make children produce sexual materials in which sometimes included the use of pets or other children, some of which was so graphic and violent it included the insertion of foreign objects like knives or cacti into their genitals. He also sent victims violent video footage of animals being tortured to death and women being raped. Clint Jordan Lapaka Nahuikakeka Borgia, who was 41, of Pahoa, Hawaii, was also indicted for similar crimes in his participation in operating in Cult. Caleb Merritt was also indicted while serving his time in prison, as well as a French national, Rohan Sandeep Rain. Yet another familiar name, right? Rohan confirmed much of the earlier speculation on the character and username. All of these men are being charged in the creation and leadership of the Cult group collectively. However, with how many of these splinters there are, and with how welcoming these sadistic monsters are growing to numbers, you remove one head, and two more pop up.
One Tucson man has been arrested for producing child sexual abuse content and belonging to online terrorist organization 764. And we must warn you that many of the details of this story you might find disturbing. A federal complaint goes to accuse 20-year-old Barton Martin of coercing minors to cut themselves on video online chat rooms like Discord since September of 2022 before he was arrested. Wednesday, this all happened, and he faces up to 30 years now in prison if he is found guilty. Now, 764 is also known as a violent extremist organization targeting children and weaponizing child abuse content.
These groups, though they operate under separate names, are very well in communication with one another and operate as a community, regardless if there really is a hierarchy or not. There is a significant amount of photographic and video evidence that suggests that they have been hurting people for many years, much longer than we think. And their members have been responsible for at least one murder and at least one child abduction on record. While it is not unequivocal as it would seem to be able to point to one direct route, the closest we can do is look at the Order of Nine Angles themselves. Out of the few extortion community members who made mainstream news headlines, Angel Almeida's connection to the Order of Nine Angles is the only one that made it into reports with insight into that group itself. To review, his detention memorandum showed that he owned and posed with a banner bearing the Temple of Blood sigil, and had a copy of the Sinister Tradition, a book by the O9A. However, Caleb Merritt and Nina Luciano, who both were publicly affiliated with the Order online. Merritt was involved with the group Cult, an account associated with the extortion community called O9A Evil, also included cut signs of the name Caleb and a video of a girl speaking to someone named Caleb, suggesting that the account belonged to Merritt, whose profile picture is a bloody fan sign with the number 764, features a bio that reads, "A sinister member of the Order of Nine Angles." Additionally, the Twitter account @TempleOfBlood has the username Hurtcore in the same spelling, reminiscent of another name Luciano used. However, he is far from the first person to use the term or spell it in a different way. Nino Luciano's involvement with the O9A raises the question of whether the murder was intended to be a, quote, culling. The Libertata article claimed that he reported anti-Semitism and later anti-Roma prejudice as his motive for the murder, although the victim did not actually belong to either group officially, so to speak. However, those political motives could be considered in line with those of the O9A. None of the available video or chat screenshots connects the murder to the O9A directly or any occult practice. However, in tribute it clearly does. And there is some evidence that the murder was inspired by a different group. As we discussed earlier, an edited version of the video also shared online claims that Luciano was acting as a member of the Maniac murder cult. Even so, the murder's resemblance to the practice of culling is worth noting due to Luciano's open association with the O9A, and it is also unclear exactly who was egging him on in the Discord call in the first place. It very well could have been a member of the Maniac murder cult 764 or the O9A, or just some random. The Order of Nine Angles has operated since the 1960s in the UK, establishing them as one of the longest-running group of its nature that we know of to date. Their ideology and imagery has served as a dog whistle to the most depraved edgelords and predators imaginable, and it continues to spawn copycats and splinter groups even as you watch this. 764 activity has in fact increased rather than decreased since the arrest of many affiliates. And Bradley Cadenhead. The reach and influence of the Order of Nine Angles is far more horrifying than many realize. For example, on March 3rd of 2023, a Kentucky man was sentenced to 45 years in prison for attempting to murder U.S. Armed Service members, as well as providing and attempting to provide material to support terrorists and illegally transmitting national defense information. The terrorists, the Order of Nine Angles, and ISIS. And the man was Ethan Felon Melzer, aka Edo Regad, a 24-year-old man from Louisville, Kentucky, who in 2019 to 2020, he was assigned to the 1st Battalion, 503rd Infantry Regiment in Vicenza, Italy. He enlisted in the U.S. Army. His entire reason for enlistment and working was with an ulterior motive. Not to better himself, not to get a career, not to serve his country. He wanted to cause chaos, death, and despair on behalf of the Order of Nine Angles, as well as ISIS. Melzer joined the U.S. Army in approximately 2018 and infiltrated its ranks as part of an insight role to further his goals as an O9A adherent. In approximately October of 2019, Melzer had deployed abroad with the Army to Italy as a member of the 173rd Airborne Brigade Combat Team. While stationed abroad, Melzer consumed propaganda from multiple extremist groups, including the O9A, in the Islamic State of Iraq, and Al-Sham, which is also known as ISIS. Melzer participated in encrypted online chats, where he downloaded and accessed photos of jihadist attacks on U.S. troops and facilities, as well as ISIS executions of civilians and other captives, in addition to far-right neo-Nazi and other white supremacist propaganda. It would be in early May of 2020 that the Army informed Melzer that he would be reassigned to a unit scheduled for a further foreign deployment, where the unit would be guarding an isolated and sensitive military installation. After he was notified of the assignment, Melzer joined his new unit and attended his training, which included classified and unclassified briefings to prepare for deployment. As part of this intensive training, Melzer learned details about the purpose, layout, and security of the military base he would be stationed at. Melzer and his unit also received in-depth training about and practice for numerous threat scenarios at the military base, including how to respond to various potential terrorist attack scenarios. Upon learning this and the importance and sensitivity of his upcoming deployment, Melzer immediately began passing that information to members of the O9A. Melzer secretly used an encrypted messaging application, presumably Telegram, for this purpose, and to advocate for and plan a deadly attack on his fellow service members. Melzer sent messages to members and associates of the O9A, and in particular a subgroup of the Order of Nine Angles called the Rapewaffen Division, providing details about his unit's anticipated deployment, including troop movements, relevant dates and locations, armaments and weapon storage, topography, and security, all in connection with the proposed attack on his own unit and the military base where he was stationed at. Melzer and his co-conspirators used this information to plan what they referred to as a jihadi attack, with the objective of causing a mass casualty event and victimizing his fellow service members. For example, some of his actions, after describing the unit's weaponry during the deployment and providing information consistent with the briefings he had received, Melzer described to his co-conspirators how an attack would essentially cripple the unit's fire teams. To further the attack plan, Melzer and his co-conspirators passed these messages to a purported member of Al-Qaeda. His proposed attack evolved as he gathered and distributed additional sensitive information about the deployment, Melzer also promised to leak more information once he arrived at the military base, including real-time photographs of the facility, and a frequency and channel of the U.S. Army radio, in order to maximize the likelihood of a successful attack on his unit, or on a replacement unit deployed to the military base. Melzer told members of the Order of Nine Angles, "You just gotta understand that I'm risking my literal free life to give you all of this, so I'm expecting results." He further acknowledged that he could be killed during the attack, and described his willingness to die for the Order of Nine Angles' goals, replying, "Who gives a fuck? It would be another war, I would have died successfully, cause another 10-year war in the Middle East would definitely leave a mark." Melzer also acknowledged in his messages that he deleted some of the communications regarding and planning the attack because the plot amounted to treason.
Let me start with you. We have this case coming out of the U.S., right, where this soldier essentially was going to rat out his group and give information, sensitive information about his unit when they were to be deployed overseas. What do you think pushes someone to be able to do that to their own unit? Because, you know, within the military especially, it's sort of ingrained in you, isn't it, to be protective of your unit?
Absolutely, Waka. Within the military, it's one of the underpinning elements of solidity that you would literally die for your fellow soldier. What's occurring here is that people who have been radicalized into this far-right worldview are offering their allegiance to what they see as an ideology in which the world should operate as to their views. And we've seen this in the United States, in Europe, and here in Australia, where, of course, the Christchurch massacre you referred to was committed by a person who their radical right-wing ideology was incubated right here in Australia.
After Melzer was exposed, several other active members of the U.S. military and even law enforcement officers were also discovered to be members of the Order of Nine Angles and other splinter groups. 22-year-old Corwin Storm Carver was found to be another member in communication with the group and was in possession of the Order of Nine Angles paraphernalia while stationed in Kuwait. Shandon Simpson, member of the Ohio Army National Guard sent to quell the George Floyd protests in Washington, D.C., openly discussed neo-Nazi views and was also found to be part of the Rapewaffen division of the Order of Nine Angles. Simpson claimed that he was planning to shoot the protesters as part of a racial holy war, but was intercepted by the FBI. But that was only after he had been deployed. And in Russia, 4 members of the Order of Nine Angles were arrested after confessing to 2 ritual murders involving cannibalism in Karelia and St. Petersburg. 2 of them were also accused of large-scale drug trafficking, as well as a large amount of narcotics were found in the home. The continuation of arrest and discovery would not cease in the coming years either, even before the acknowledgement of the 764 and the widespread network of terror and exploitation in which it's interconnected to. A 15-year-old named Rhiannon Rudd allegedly planned to bomb a synagogue and was arrested in October of 2020 in the United Kingdom. However, the charges were dropped after concluding that she had been a victim of trafficking who had been grooming and sexually exploiting her. Rudd was also allegedly radicalized by the Atomwaffen division of the O9A.
Well, there's a question that many of you have asked since the King 5 investigators first reported on a neo-Nazi group with roots right here in Washington state. How are its young members so full of hate?
Tonight we have one answer to that question. He's the man who is the guiding hand behind the Atomwaffen division, as Chris Ingalls is here in studio to show us. Chris.
Hello, Mark Joyce. The FBI has noted a couple of things about the Atomwaffen division. Its members are young and they are prepared for violence. They're training for it right here in Washington and following the lead of 3 men, including one you've probably never heard of. Adolf Hitler, dead. Mass murderer Charles Manson, dead. James Mason, alive.
What are you doing? Are you stalking me?
A new generation of neo-Nazis, seen here training in Skagit County in Washington state, have been radicalized by Mason's writings and podcasts. The Atomwaffen division is preparing for Mason's prophesized race war. and Mason admits there are limits to his claim of nonviolence.
I say, don't do it. But if you're gonna do it, for God's sake, do it right.
Doing violence the right way, in Mason's view, may have been what the 25-year-old leader of Washington's Atomwaffen cell was preparing for.
She took her own life on May 19th of 2022, presumably for the entertainment by the O9A. Later the same year, the Finnish Security Intelligence Service also singled out the Order of Nine Angles as a source of radicalization and concern in the country. As of November 2023, Finnish police were investigating at least 3 terrorism cases connected to the group, and according to Finnish authorities, the Order of Nine Angles has had a presence in Tampere and is potentially connected to an unsolved murder and multiple other ones in the city. Canada has also been plagued with multiple incidences related to the group and its offshoots. The picture being painted and displayed for you is the grim reality that this is a worldwide phenomenon targeting children and other vulnerable individuals internationally, using the very themes and egregious crimes of our very nightmares and making them a reality. Another tragic and disgusting example is the commercialization of CSAM online, an occurrence that is uncommon and really only occurred with Peter Scully in minor instances from what we know. Despite his bit of success, as money adds risk, pedophiles want to collect. They want to see their crimes, they want trophies, they want to dive into the depraved bullshit they enjoy. But they don't want to get caught. And with money, leaves a money trail. However, these groups do not care of the risk. They thrive off fear, and the chaos they cause, and the selling of their original abuse material does in fact happen via the dark web. Despite the wide array of crimes committed, we will move onward to 2024, when a high school student in Guadalajara, Mexico, broadcast himself on livestream attacking his classmates with an axe. Another case that was thought to be random, but his social media posts showed his allegiance to the Order of Nine Angles, including satanic blood pacts, allegedly. This further adds another horrifying reality to even those who indulge in our morbid curiosity just on gore alone. Just how many of these once thought random gore clips are actually a result of the actions of these groups? More than you'd think. What about the blue whale game, for example? What about the zoo sadism rings? And exactly how deep the connections go is still unclear. And with how many subsects of these groups are out there, their goals unify the same horrific ideology of genuine evil. For example, the Rapewaffen is a faction whose ideas have roots in the Atomwaffen sect and the Order of Nine Angles. But this sect encourages its adherents to rape white women in order to increase the number of white births, all while participating in the culling of minorities. The exact extent of their crimes is truly unknown, but just looking into the Order of Nine Angles themselves, on record at least, the crimes date all the way back to 1997. The Order of Nine Angles came into being during the 1960s era with the merger of 3 self-described dark pagan covens named Comlod, the Noctulians, and the Temple of the Sun. In the beginning, the newly merged group was led by a Lady Master, who later relocated to Australia. Then Anton Long was made the Grand Master of the group by the Lady Master. It was during 1972 that this group began to call itself the Order of Nine Angles. This allegedly was also the year when Anton Long began to write manuscripts for the Order. Then during the late 1980s and onward, the Order of Nine Angles spread its teachings by mail. The spread of propaganda in the Order of Nine Angles abroad during this era was done by spiral-bound notebooks sold to those interested in the back of occult magazines, and including in his own magazine called Fenrir. The Order of Nine Angles system is designed to be a self-initiatic and individualistic quest, meaning that one has but to initiate oneself through the sevenfold way degrees and study the teachings to be a sinister initiate of the Order of Nine Angles tradition. The original Dark Pagan group in Shropshire, now known as the Old Guard, would personally mentor new initiates via mail. During the second phase, from the 1990s and early 2000s, the Order of Nine Angles was less visibly active, focusing less on recruitment and more on refining its image and teachings. A connection between the Order of Nine Angles and neo-Nazism came to prominence after the 1999 London nail bombings in Brixton Market, Brick Lane, and the Admiral Duncan pub in Soho, which targeted the city's black, Bengali, and LGBT populations, killing 3 and injuring up to 140. The bomber, David Copeland, was a neo-Nazi militant who allegedly inspired by the Practical Guide to Aryan Revolution, a 1997 pamphlet written by David Mamet, founder of the neo-Nazi National Socialist movement. In 1998, the anti-fascist magazine Searchlight claimed to have identified Mamet as Anton Long. That year, detectives raided his home, and he was arrested on suspicion of conspiracy to murder and incitement of racial hatred, but the charges were dropped. Mamet then pursued the study of Islam, and is believed to have converted to the militant interpretation of the religion of Order of Nine Angles soon after this. Just a year prior, however, in 1997, on July 23rd, a body of an unknown man was discovered in a park in the city of Gothenburg in western Sweden. The man, who had been shot twice with a pistol, was identified 2 days later as Joseph Ben Medor. He was 36 years old, a homosexual Algerian national who had been living in Sweden for many years. This murder was directly tied to some affiliation of the Order of Nine Angles and is arguably their first on record to be officially recognized by authorities. The Temple of the Black Light, formerly known as the Misanthropic Luciferian Order prior to 2007, was a, quote, satanic occult order founded in Sweden in 1995, and originally had 3 members that you may be familiar with, whose real name was Shaheen Kashnud, John Nutfight of Dissection, and another member who left the group early. Johan Norman joined the order at the same time as John, but left the group when Vlad and John started talking about committing violent acts. Vlad's girlfriend later became a supporting member. The group never grew beyond this size again after 2 earlier friends had dropped out. But on December 15th of 1997, a 23-year-old woman entered a police station in Stockholm, the Swedish capital. She wanted to file a complaint against her boyfriend, Vlad, whom she accused of beating her and threatening to kill her. She also told police officers present that Vlad had also confessed to her that he was the one, along with his friend John, the perpetrators of the Kahlers Park murder. Investigations ensued and the arrests of John and Vlad came to be, and on July 6 of 1998, John was sentenced by the Gothenburg District Court to 8 years in prison for accessory to murder and illegal possession of a firearm. Vlad was sentenced to 10 years for murder and violence against his girlfriend and possession of a legal firearm and possession of body parts. All 3 parties appealed the verdict, and both would be released from prison in 2004. But John would end his life in 2006. His body was found at his home, surrounded by a ring of candles and a ritual book by his side. Often revered by black metal fans for these acts, most often do not know his connections to one of the worst terror groups to ever form. The Order of Nine Angles' blending of Satanism, neo-Nazism, and the elements of Western esotericism is unique. But the selective combining of seemingly contradictory elements is not unprecedented in modern Satanism. The Order of Nine Angles identifies as part of the left-hand path, conventionally associated with evil or black magic, as opposed to the right-hand path, which is seen as good and practices quote-unquote white magic. The left-hand path also contains a variety of Satanists. For example, the Church of Satan's beliefs are atheistic or rational, as they take Satan to be purely symbolic, and the practice of magic is a form of psychodrama and symbolism. While the Order of Nine Angles is theistic, believing in the actual existence of Satan and the dark gods, and for whom they magically draw from and the influences in human history. However, do not confuse these individuals with traditional theistic Satanists, as the Order of Nine Angles is a horrific bastardization of the belief, as I said before. In traditional theistic Satanism, although the worship or praise of Satan or Lucifer is to be expected, it is strictly forbidden to harm others without need, and so on. Much like the satanic tenets of the Levian Satanism and the Church of Satan, there is order rules and good-natured structures at its core. The elements of darkness are a part of ritual and presence and nothing of ill intent. The bastardization is, in my eyes, a major factor into the villainization of Satanism as a modern belief, as these groups like 764, the 09A, and so forth promote the exact messages that the very real Satanic Panic fabricated. These groups are the real deal and only do and promote the very worst crimes and actions, all in the name of Satan. A figure that is never meant to represent these sorts of human evils directly, even in the Christian Bible. The root ideology in theistic Satanism is a different perspective on mythology and the Christian figures as a whole. The path of self-growth and happiness is one being their own God. The 9 angles themselves in the Order's name could refer to the 7 celestial bodies as 7 angles: the Moon, Venus, Mercury, the Sun, Mars, Jupiter, and Saturn, plus the entire system as a whole, the 8th angle, and the mystic as the 9th angle. The 9 angles could also refer to the 7 normal, quote-unquote, alchemical stages, in addition to the 2 processes that involve esoteric time. Or it could refer to the ancient 9 emanations of the divine as recorded in ancient Sufi texts. According to the 09A, civilizations emerge, advance, and decay in aeons, or historical periods lasting 1500 to 1700 years. Civilizations achieve greatness because of a successful opening of a nexion, or channel, enabling the casual realm, this world, where the laws of physics and cause and effects apply, to be influenced by the supernatural forces from the acasual realm. For the Order of 9 Angles, the current aeon should rightfully see the ascendancy of Western European civilization, but this has been disrupted by Judeo-Christian influences, allegedly. To remedy this disruption, the Order of 9 Angles advocates for the practice of magic as well as direct political action. For example, the 09A encourages culling to remove human dross or scum. This amounts to human sacrifice, achieved either through magic or direct murder. According to the 09A's interpretation, direct killings or assassinations were a reality within historical, quote-unquote, Satanism, but are no longer undertaken and are described in their manuals for historical interest only. The Order of 9 Angles teaches that individuals can become channels of the acasual realm through pathemathos, Greek for learning through adversity or suffering. Pathemathos is a part of the 09A's philosophy of initiation, which includes the adoption of insight roles, in which adepts are pushed out of their comfort zones for an extended period, perhaps by joining violent criminal or underground organizations, including neo-Nazi or militant Islamic groups, or as recommended in some of the Order of 9 Angles writings, by adopting Buddhist monasticism. A stark reality in all of this is the connection to violent media like gore content in these individuals. Unfortunately, even this documentary is destined to attract attention in a negative way from these groups. Statistically, it is known as they are so widespread and feed off the limelight. However, the balance of taking that risk is getting the information out to the public is the keystone to this all. A harsh fact is that even if many do not have ill intention in true crime and gore spaces, this sort of content will attract the most depraved individuals, and some of those will use the opportunity to promote their own agendas. Alliances between groups in the network can be incredibly complex as well. While members often identify as a member of a specific group, they generally operate in online spaces shared by entire networks, and often other extremist elements come into play. This often minimizes the value of alliances, as group members often prioritize their relationships with other individual users over intergroup politics. For example, while No Lives Matter announced in May of 2024 that they were no longer affiliated with 764, it has been observed that the crossover in membership across the group's Telegram channels and other social media accounts still happens. It is also important to highlight that the majority of perpetrators and victims of 764 are minors, the majority of which have a history of self-harm, evidence of trauma and vulnerabilities that makes them candidates for recruitment into more kinetically minded groups. The recent English translation of the MKU handbook was initially shared via 764's Telegram channels and other social media, which seek to encourage acts of violence and terrorism. These groups operate primarily on popular social media platforms and gaming spaces: Facebook, TikTok, Instagram, Twitter, Fortnite, Roblox, and even Minecraft servers. They find inclusive spaces to infiltrate and target those they deem vulnerable. Some members of the network extort children for sexual pleasure, some for power and control. Some do it merely for the kick that comes from the manipulation and hurting others. Others make a little money selling the explicit CSAM content produced by the extortion on the dark web. This is the definition of evil, something that regardless of your point of view on life, the world, or religion is universally recognized. Upon creating this documentary, it dawned on me that over the years, as I began to ignore the clout-hungry mixtape creators and other degenerates in that field, just how many offshoot members, or at least edgelords promoting such groups, actually tried to contact me, and even tried to get me to review their gore mixtapes, which could very well have contained illegal material. Even in a video I made mocking an exploitation glorifying iceberg that was posted on Reddit was met with an incredible hate. Some of those numbers tended to show up in the usernames, as they want their original content, so to speak, to be seen and spoken of. Kyle Spitz, another prominent member of the network, was arrested in 2024 in a case that highlighted some of the traumatic circumstances and upbringings of some of the members. Spitz, known online as Criminal, distributed a video in 2023 on Discord of his mother's boyfriend shooting a gun at him, followed by a video of his mother's corpse after she had overdosed on drugs. The 24-year-old belonged to a 764 offshoot called Harm Nation and was arrested in 2024 for producing self-harm videos of minors in CSAM, including a particularly graphic clip involving a 12-year-old child. Historically, 764 members have discouraged victims from reporting their abuse through swatting and false reports to law enforcement. In addition to threatening to release their intimate photos, 764 members often threaten to swat the victims' families or friends. However, in two recent cases, the network resorted to more extreme methods of criminal extortion, going onto the dark web and actually hiring others located near the victim to intimidate them through very real-world actions such as firebombings and even shootings. These individuals are usually hired from the other portions of the comm network focused on traditional criminal activity, demonstrating the increased cross-pollination between these groups. There are even ties to organized crime in Eastern Europe, including Russia, where the groups are also viewed as terrorists and their propaganda is outlawed. However, as I said, despite the arrests and great efforts to stunt and inevitably stop these groups and individual actors, it is an increasingly difficult upward battle as they continue to grow and thrive on the media spotlight, attracting more and more vulnerable and ultimately depraved people to their ranks. 764 still recruits members from online communities interested in obscene material such as those dedicated to gore and the celebration of mass shootings, or terrorism, and other violent extremist values. The key part of the 764 recruitment and the socialization is gaming spaces and the adjacent gaming technologies. Games with young player bases, especially Roblox and Minecraft, are principal platforms for predation. After contact is established with a victim, they are invited to join a private space, typically a Discord, where the grooming and sextortion will occur. Discords are incredibly easy to run and start, and most people are familiar with them and how they work, and that is presumably why it is the preferred platform of choice. Keep in mind, too, on Roblox, Minecraft, and even creative mode on Fortnite, you're able to create your own games and servers if you are skilled enough or just simply have the knowledge how to set it up. There are many of these spaces that are run by 764 users, even self-harm servers and gore servers on Discord. Additionally, the ease of server creation and management and the capacity for text, voice, and video communication at ease, it all makes it an attractive platform for their purpose. This is why Discord is used. And these Discord servers can have an incredible amount of members. In some of the screenshots shown, there was over 2,000. Legal action has only been taken due to tips sent to the National Center for Missing and Exploited Children, as seen with Kaden Head and Kaylin Limpkin, for example, via investigations by the FBI and law enforcement agencies following a serious crime, as this was the case with Caleb Merritt. And observation by many after viewing chat logs and other evidence of the crimes of these groups shows that several members who become abusers were also initially victims, who then continue to perpetuate the horrible cycle of violence and trauma. Trauma is essential to the preservation of growth in the community. Trauma preserves members who are either scared of losing social bonds or accepting what they have done, or what has happened to them within themselves. Victims are also turned into abusers and recruiters who do unto others as was done to them. And this trauma makes it difficult to perform non-securitized interventions and prevents individuals from seeking help independently themselves. A common issue we analyze when we dissect the psychology of a mass shooter, for example, or a passion murderer, or even when someone takes their own life. Mental health is a highly underestimated demon that could lead young minds into these situations and sometimes force them into subserviency under these monsters. There is no foolproof way to protect your kids, but awareness and common sense are strong factors that are overlooked. Check on your children and observe spaces they inhabit online, but do not destroy their privacy or trust. Your children need you to protect them from these monsters, and the hardest and most terrifying scenario for me to grasp as a father is the idea that even a simple Fortnite creative mode match, a passing voice chat there, or maybe a public Minecraft server, or even Brookhaven on Roblox, could lead to some of the worst crimes I've ever read about in my entire life. There is no solace in this story. There's no peace or light. It's a darkness that haunts the world we live in, and despite the fight against it, it's consuming. For over 30 years this has been occurring. Some other crimes thought random were in fact a result of these types of groups, and it should teach us all to look deeper into what we think we know, and to always question our findings at least once. Never underestimate the extent of evil, and evil is that which would bring harm to those without evil, children.
Online game Roblox has been downloaded 905 million times since its launch in 2006. It currently has 70.2 million daily active users. Discord is an online chat billed as a place where users can talk every day and hang out more often. It has more than 175 million active monthly users. From the outside, they look like harmless sites, keeping restless kids and teens occupied, but the reality is much darker. These predators search for their victims on computer games like Roblox and then persuade them to move on to chat apps like Discord.
So they start with getting the children to do something small doesn't seem like a big deal, be clothed or whatever. They also share a lot of child sexual exploitation material in the groups that then desensitizes the other children and makes them feel like it's not such a big deal, and then they escalate the demands to the point where it's very explicit, awful, the worst things that you could possibly imagine.
Thank you for watching. If you would like to support this channel and projects like these, please see the links in the descriptions and you can support me there. There's nothing more to say about this.